Chinese history. So complicated, yet so rich in culture and politics. In this video, I will attempt to simplify this history for you. Let's just dive in, shall we? Chinese history can be divided into various periods, characterized by the rule of a particular dynasty. The ancient Chinese believed in the mandate of heaven, which is the belief that a ruler or dynasty would be appointed by the gods and therefore have legitimacy. However, for any number of reasons, a dynasty could lose the mandate, resulting in a new dynasty coming and overthrowing the previous one. Chinese mythology names the mythical 5 emperors, these being the Yellow Emperor, Xuanzhu, Yao, Shun, and Yu. Of the greatest importance to historians is Emperor Yu, who founded China's first dynasty, the Xia. Now, the Xia were the first Chinese culture that is not considered entirely mythical. Archaeologists have unearthed evidence of a civilization in the lower Yellow River Basin dating back to between 2100 and 1600 BC. Whether or not this civilization was consolidated enough to be called a kingdom is up for debate. Chinese history really begins with the Shang Dynasty. Now, there's one key thing that the Shang did that would define later Chinese dynasties: burial tombs. Very, very elaborate burial tombs. The ancient Chinese did not want their dead rulers to go to the afterlife alone, so they would store weapons, precious stones, and other dead people in these tombs to accompany their rulers into the afterlife. This would become a running theme throughout Chinese history. The Shang Dynasty starts around the same time as the Bronze Age, and ended around 1045 BC with the arrival of a new dynasty, the Zhou. The Zhou witnessed an explosion of cultural and intellectual development. Writing was developed, and historians began recording history on paper, and poetry flourished. And so, from this point onward, historians can study Chinese history in much greater detail. Historians during the Zhou period say that the Shang had fallen into immorality and therefore lost the mandate of heaven, and the Zhou dynasty had been chosen by the gods as the new rightful dynasty. For 2 centuries, the Zhou were a consolidated kingdom occupying most of the Yellow River Basin. But of course, the Zhou would have to lose the mandate of heaven at some point. In 770 BC, the kingdom split into several different political entities, and so began the Summer and Autumn period. While political consolidation was hard to come by in this span of 300 years, literature and technology flourished. Many important literary works were written, but none so important as the works of Confucius, who laid the groundwork of Confucianism, which would later become a very common and widespread religion throughout ancient China. After the death of Confucius, the various states left over from the Zhou dynasty began a period of almost constant warfare, now known as the Warring States period. Around 350 BC, one of these states, the Qing Dynasty, began a process of successful expansion. First, they conquered the Shu, then 9 years later they conquered the Wei. Slowly but surely, the Qing Dynasty consolidated all of the Chinese states and established China's first legalistic dynasty. I say legalistic because the Qing Dynasty followed a specific strand of Chinese philosophy known as legalism, developed in the 4th century by Shang Yang. The dynasty represented an important milestone in Chinese history. For the first time, most Chinese people were living under a united empire. Cities grew exponentially, especially the capital, Chang'an, which is today a city of 12 million people. The dynasty reached its peak under the emperor of Shi Huangdi, the first emperor, and would last a grand total of 14 years. Despite all of its grandeur and emphasis on a strong centralized military, the Qing Dynasty barely lasted beyond its consolidation, yet it marked an important point in Chinese history. Never again would the Chinese heartland be divided for as long as it was during the Warring States period. After the collapse of the Qin came the Han Dynasty. The Han expanded upon the ideals of the Qin. For 400 years, China was peaceful, stable, and prosperous. The Han established what the Qin had dreamed of, a unified China. Chinese culture, art, poetry, and technology flourished under the Han. To say this was a golden age in Chinese history would be accurate. There's a reason why Han Chinese is still the dominant Chinese ethnic group to this day. Chinese influence began to expand eastward. The Han conquered the Tarim Basin, a very large eye-shaped desert in modern-day Xinjiang province in western China. This would be an important stepping stone for Chinese expansion into Central Asia. But all good things must come to an end. In 184 AD, a large group of Chinese peasants, calling themselves the Yellow Turbans, revolted. While the revolt was unable to completely destroy the Han Dynasty, it severely weakened it. Various generals and warlords emerged as heroes from the revolt, as the centralized power of the Han Dynasty weakened. One such warlord by the name of Cao Cao attempted to reunify the empire, but at the decisive Battle of the Red Cliffs, he was defeated by two other warlords. Then began the Three Kingdoms period. For 60 years, China was divided, until the Qing Dynasty, successors of Cao Cao, conquered the other two kingdoms. For the next 400 years, China would alternate between being politically consolidated and being divided until the year 618. In 618, a governor by the name of Li Yuan rose up in rebellion against the collapsing Sui dynasty, and he established the Tang Dynasty, which would represent a spiritual successor to the Han Dynasty, a new golden age in Chinese history. But that is a story for another time. If you would like to see a part 2 to this video, please let me know in the comments below. You can help this channel out by subscribing or liking the video. And as always, credit to these people for some of the images shown here.